Hi there. I wrote an allegorical story recently, which forms volume 2 of the epistles and sayings of the Magus, and which actually forms a whole bunch of new material, which will be published in a paper book version of the Grail Gnosticism book that I've already got online, which is free at the moment. Well, free PDF. This is kind of my alternative cosmology. It's Gnostic in essence, but it's much more influenced, I suppose, by Eastern philosophy, Hindu philosophy, really, than it is influenced by classical Gnosticism. And it's a story which starts with a person here who's meditating. This is the back view of them, posterior view of the person meditating, and she is excellent at meditating. Well, actually, in the first version of the story, she actually just falls asleep during one of the guru's sermons. But I think this is a little taking a bit far. I think what actually happens in the version 2 is that she is very good at meditating. Brilliant. She's one of the best students ever. And she's so good at it that when she goes into a very deep trance one day, she begins to create worlds. First of all, starting from this one here, and then she creates worlds within worlds, and all the way down. And as each world is created, it becomes more and more dense. So we're sort of following Gurdjieff's version here, or no, Ouspensky's version, where everything starts sort of free mode. Molecules start very dispersed, and everything's very etheric and ethereal. And as we go down into the layers, it becomes more and more dense until we arrive basically at a very strange world where the meditation begins to take off. It begins to acquire a life of its own, sort of following Mary Shelley's sort of monster. It becomes a monster, which the meditator can no longer control. The worlds start to create themselves out of her control altogether, including one which finally is the worlds that we know of the demiurge. And then this is a little picture of what's happening in the middle. And what happens is that the world is created by the demiurge, and as a result of this, the meditator suddenly becomes aware of what she is doing, and she throws herself into this material world. The material world exists just underneath the sort of fiery world of the demiurge, and she creates millions of replicas of herself, a bit like a holographic image. A holographic image is made up of thousands of images that replicate the image that you see. And so she replicates a holographic image of herself. And each one of these images is soul, is the spirit, spark, heart, soul. And each sentient, and it sort of jumps in. So she jumps into these sentient beings um, appear in the created world, ape-like creatures. And the idea is she jumps into each one of them as soul, and she can partake in the experience and try to help these poor benighted savage creatures that have no soul, not even like the animals. They are even lower than the animals, a sort of proto-human species. And so she gives them each a soul. And the idea basically is that when enough of these little creatures have a soul which becomes aware of this whole story, then they can begin their journey back to the original place where the meditator is still sleeping. Well, still not sleeping, but still in trance. So what happens is a kind of reverse order happens. The soul starts here and it goes out, and its consciousness moves out to these more ethereal images or worlds of the sleeping or the tranced out meditator. And then suddenly at some point, the meditator, these would all the images of herself, which are all souls, will suddenly coalesce and jump back in to the meditator. So her consciousness, having been dissipated and fragmented, will then jump back into the meditator's actual body, or rather, well, when I say body, I mean body in the supernal realms, if you can call it a body, and will reconstitute as one single consciousness. So the one, is reconstituted. So the one is sort of broken up into many different worlds, different creations, all reflections of herself, until she gets to this level. And then they rather alarmingly begin to replicate themselves beyond her control. So that's why she has to leap in to the creatures that are created eventually by the demiurge in order to give each a soul, in order to basically reverse the process and to reconstitute the oneness of her focused mind back to where she started this whole process. So basically, she's fantastic at meditation, but it goes wrong. The meditation, as I say, takes a life of itself. It takes on a life of itself. Sorry, and that's the problem. So in a way, the demiurge created worlds are a mistake. And this model, of course, completely contradicts my model of the parallel lines, and the fact that the worlds of the demiurge go back into infinity, and the supernal worlds are also in infinity. So this actually contradicts that model, which is rather a problem actually. But the point about it, that the moral of the story, I suppose, is that we are all her. I mean, we are all reflections of the original meditator that created all these worlds, and had to actually go into the created world, the world created by the demiurge, in order to restore the balance. Because this situation, where the meditation took on a life of itself, is unbalanced. You see, that was never intended. So in order to restore universal balance, the process of creation has to be reversed, you see, and dissolution has to occur of all these different worlds that she creates, or had created before. So it's so from my point of view, the point is that it's like our minds are in control. It's like this whole thing was created by a single mind, and it's a single mind that will dissolve the illusion. Dissolve not only the material world of the demiurge, the world of the demiurge itself, but all these other etheric worlds, which are actually precursors of the demiurge world, and so therefore are tainted with a flaw. That, I mean, each of these worlds that she creates is actually flawed, because she initiates a process which cannot actually be stopped, a chain reaction, as it were. And that's a problem. I mean, she never intended for that. She only intended to create this one layer of a world created by her trance, her imagination. But then she saw that she was creating another one, and it was all fine until this moment, when it began to take on a life of its own, and it was no longer under her control. So having realised that, that's when she jumped in to the physical world and made holographic images of herself. And all these holographic images, all these little units of consciousness, have to come back. They have to reverse the process, and they all have to come together to create the oneness that was. So the point is that this is, and I'm coming to the actual point of this, is that everything is under our control. It's like we have created these worlds. We have even created the demiurge, and created the physical world, which is the sort of nexus of illusion. And so this is a kind of a different model, really, because the demiurge and the good God are not self-created. This is actually they've all been created by the mind of the original meditator. You see, and that's very significant because if they can be created, they can be uncreated. Whereas, of course, this model here, where the demiurge is infinite and the good God is infinite, running parallel to each other, they cannot ever be uncreated, you see. They go on for infinity. So I don't know which sort of model I favour. I do like this model actually. I think it's a very good model, and then when you put in the fact that the Holy Spirit joins these two tracks together in a sort of unity of convenience, as it were, so that soul, which is in this track, can can go over to this track. I like that model very much because it's more of a theistic model. This is more of a Buddhist model, where the consciousness of the human being, because she is human, the meditator is human, well, human in quotes, has created all this. So we have created all this reality, you see, through our own consciousness. So it is a slightly different emphasis, in fact, a radically different emphasis, really, from my theistic model, where gods and goddesses are created themselves in infinity, you see. And I think a lot of people, modern people, would probably like this sort of Buddhist or quasi-Buddhist model better, because it means that we have to every little soul has to spread the word to every other soul, because at a certain point, at a certain critical mass of units of consciousness, as it were, then this whole sorry process will be reversed, and the mistake that the original meditator made will be rectified, you see. So that's a kind of a modern Gnostic quasi-Buddhist model, which you may find interesting, intriguing, and it certainly makes more sense, therefore, to meditate, because you're reaching down into this holographic image of the original meditator when you become soul aware, and that soul awareness, if you share it with enough people, will eventually unwind or wrap up the whole carpet. You imagine a carpet being rolled out. Well, the carpet can be rolled back, can be rolled up again. And if enough people are rolling it up again through meditation, then oneness will be restored, you see. So I thought I'd just leave you with this rather intriguing model of Gnostic cosmology, and hope that you derive some inspiration from it.